If you ever find something that clearly doesn't belong to you, don't touch it. Don't question it, and don't convince yourself it's harmless, because the night I picked up a small brass key from the street, I learned how easily a life can be quietly erased and replaced. It was after midnight when I noticed the key lying on wet pavement outside a closed jewelry store, positioned perfectly under a streetlight as if someone wanted it to be seen. And when I picked it up, it was disturbingly warm in my hand, like it had been dropped only seconds earlier. And engraved on its head was a single letter M, simple, deliberate, and unsettling. I stood there longer than I should have, looking up and down the street, half expecting someone to run back for it. But the road was empty, the store was dark, and the city felt unusually still, so I slipped the key into my pocket and walked home, not realizing that from that moment forward I was no longer unobserved. By the time I reached my apartment building, the silence felt heavier, and in the hallway something was wrong. My doormat looked brand new, identical to the old one, but unmistakably unfamiliar, and there was a thin scratch beside my door lock that hadn't been there earlier, a detail so small I almost ignored it until I stepped inside and noticed an envelope placed neatly at the center of my table. My name written on it, in clean, confident block letters, and inside was a freshly printed photograph of my own hand holding the brass key outside the jewelry store, complete with a timestamp from just 30 minutes earlier, along with a note that read, "Return what you took." Before fear could fully settle in, my phone rang from an unknown number, and a calm, emotionless voice told me I had picked up something that opened a door I was never meant to find and instructed me to come alone to the old city clock tower at exactly 12:10 if I wanted to keep breathing normally. And although every instinct screamed at me to call the police or throw the key away, fear doesn't make you heroic, it makes you obedient. And obedience is how people disappear quietly. The clock tower stood empty when I arrived, its shadow stretching across the square like a warning, and at precisely 12:10, a hooded man emerged from behind a pillar and explained without urgency or anger that years ago, a theft had gone wrong, a man had died, and evidence capable of destroying everyone involved had been hidden, away locked somewhere only that key could reach. Beneath the tower, through a narrow metal door I had never noticed before, we descended into a cold stone room where dozens of names were scratched into the walls, some crossed out, some circled, some dated like a silent archive of erased lives. And at the center sat a metal locker that opened when I entered, the code written on the back of my own photograph. 12:10. Inside were stolen valuables and a small black notebook. And the moment I opened it, I understood the jewelry was meaningless, because the notebook contained names, addresses, dates, and notes like courier, safe house, and cleaner. And beside one repeated initial was the same letter stamped on the key. Amand. When I reached the final page, my breath caught, because my name was written there along with tonight's date. Panic took over and I ran, abandoning the tower and the shadows, bursting into the hospital emergency entrance, where lights, cameras, and people gave me a false sense of safety, slamming the notebook onto the security desk and demanding the police be called. But before help arrived, my phone vibrated one last time with a message that read, "You didn't read the last line." And when I flipped the page with shaking hands, I saw a single word written beneath my name in darker ink than the rest replacement, and in that moment, the truth finally became clear. The list was never about killing people. It was about keeping a system alive, because when someone became inconvenient, they weren't removed, they were replaced. One life quietly swapped for another. And as that realization settled in, I heard a slow metallic scraping behind me, deliberate and patient, like a key being tested in a lock. And when I turned around, the last thing I saw before the lights flickered was a gloved hand holding another brass key identical to mine, stamped once again with the letter M. And I finally understood that the key I found wasn't lost at all. It was waiting for someone exactly like me. If this story kept you listening till the end, you'd like to support the channel. Subscribe for more dark murder mysteries and horror stories. And comment, Bella, would you have picked up the key or walked